Lord Benjamin Franklin once said, "When will mankind be convinced and agree to settle their disputes by arbitration?" Well, now is the time, and we have just the right kind of people handling the arbitration, especially when it's in able hands of individuals like one of us who is with us today on An Hour with LawSikho. Joining us on An Hour with LawSikho is Mr. Anubhab Sarkar with vast experience in corporate commercial advisory, dispute resolution, particularly international arbitration, bilateral investment treaty, arbitration, and public international law and startup advisory. He has also been involved in cross-border mergers and acquisition for companies across ITs, ITES, and e-commerce and pharmaceutical sector. Apart from speaking about arbitration for young lawyers, Anubhav has also agreed to talk about climate change and forced migration, a session you definitely can't afford to miss. Anubhav, we heartily welcome you on An Hour with LawSikho.
Thank you so much, Aditya. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, Anubhav, I'm not going to waste a lot of time and jump directly on the questions.
Right.
We know that you were a little skeptical initially about opting for law school in the first place. What made you change that? Could you talk a little about how your life at law school was?
Now, coming to think about that, it's been a while since way back in law school. I joined law school back in 2010, and ever since that, it's been a long run, and I think it was a decent enough run. Well, I was a big time engineering aspirant to start with, and my mother was a lawyer. And I remember when I started to go for these CLAT classes at the persuasion of my mother for the last 1 month before CLAT, I remember the huge influence Mr. Rajneesh Singh had on me, and it was humongous. And I was really not convinced to go for law, but he made sure that I watched the right kind of movies, and which invigorated that uh, passion in me, and I realized that this is something I might be able to do for a living. In spite of getting admitted into engineering college, I took a wrong turn. I came back to a law school, joined a law school, and I have not regretted that decision ever since. So it's been
Anubhav,
quite
I'm
good.
going to cut you there and I'm going to ask you that there are a lot of law students who get depressed midway and they feel like they've probably not taken the right kind of decision to opt for law. What are these movies that you used to watch so that they can be motivated when they feel low?
Yeah, I mean, to name a few, it's one of them is Paper Chase. That's on the top of my head. That's what I can remember. Paper Chase is a brilliant movie about this law student in Harvard Law who falls in love with his contract law professor's daughter. Finds it extremely hard to traverse to law school, but still makes it in the end. Uh, Boston Legal was one of them. The practice, though these really are not a proper depiction of how the industry works, but it gives you that jolt and passion to go forward with something that you really believe in. So I believe those have really insinuated me to go forward with law.
All right. Tell us about your life at law school. What all did you do in the course of your law school?
So I joined KIIT Law School in 2010. Uh, it was it. I mean, it was a fairly new law school, having started in 2007. So I was extremely blessed to have really, 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 really nice seniors who, who guided me through the whole process. Okay, and I was extremely determined to make sure what I was doing was correct in the right path. And for that to happen, you need to have people who show you the right way. Okay, I remember my then Vice Chancellor, Professor Faizan Mustafa, who was the present Vice Chancellor of NALSAR, uh, was teaching us constitutional law, and he had a very popular gimmick that if you would ask a very pertinent question or answer a very pertinent answer, he would give you a 10 rupee note. I think I still have that 10 rupee note with me, and and these small events in settle your or cement your position in what you want to do moving on. And one, and going forward, I had brilliant seniors, like to name a few, like I don't know, like I should be, but they really helped me, and they told me, they made sure that I was going the right path, internships, moods, everything. So, and one thing I want to tell all the students is that if it does not matter you're from a national law school or a non-national law school. Okay, what matters at the end of the day is whether you have the urge, the persistence to stick it out and do it. Okay, for that, to that end, it's very important to ask questions. Okay, I mean, asking question is taxless, it's priceless. You can go and ask a question to anyone. The fact that he answers or not, whether he responds to you in positiveness, like in positivity or not, is secondary. But if you ask, you have at least quenched your part to do. And if you have 100 hits, if 3 hits comes back, it's always a good run. It's always a good run. People often come up to me and ask me where to do my internships, what to do, whether to do corporate, whether to do commercial arbitration, whether to do international law, intellectual property. As much as mentorship matters at the end of the day, but it is on one's idea of how they want to traverse their career. For me, it was more like I had a picture of what I wanted in my mind by the end of second year or third year. And I was steadfast towards it. I made sure that, I was working towards it. I was, uh, I wrote to people left, right, center, okay, because I have nothing to lose. So, and I hope so it has paid off. So let's see. That's what.
It sure has paid off for sure. Tell us something that international law is an area which is liked by many people, however, taken by a very few individuals, especially in India. What led you? What was the decision, or what was the changing factor that led you to take it up? And how rocky or how beautifully even has the journey been so far?
This takes me to a very interesting situation. I was in my first year, and my university was hosting the South India rounds of JESOPs. So, as a first-year-old, when you see JESOPs being argued in your law school, you really are in awe of the whole event and the judges which come in and everything. I specifically remember a certain judge called Professor Ambrose. He's an extremely lovable man, contrary to what he's during a moot court situation. Uh, if I remember properly, he knows Ian Brownlee and Malcolm Shaw by heart, and he knows page numbers by heart. He knows paragraph numbers by heart. In such a situation, during giving a vote of thanks after the Jessup event, uh, he said that I don't think international law should be a subject for undergraduates. It should be a subject for postgraduates because uh, the amount of complexity, the amount of understanding of law, the division of law, what is the difference between municipal law and international law? What is 2 clause 3 of the United Nations Charter, understanding the values behind the United Nations Charter, everything comes into the picture. So he said that it's redundant to teach international law to undergrad students, and I am a huge sucker for any kind of challenge. Uh, a very close senior of mine had then initiated the International Law Society in our university as a first step method to it. I got myself enrolled in the International Law Society without having known anything of international law. Then came an opportunity for me to join a senior team and join a senior team to attend the GLC Bombay Treaty Appreciation Competition. It was a humongous experience in my life because I was exposed to as a first year student, I was exposed to international law in its various facets. And to be honest, I never looked back. Okay. I remember in third year in my law school, you have to choose your specialization. And that becomes a major part of your curriculum going forward till fifth year. Uh, my parents insisted me that I take corporate law or constitutional law so that I can make practice, as they call it. But without having let them know I had taken up international law, they only got to know that I had taken international law honors once they saw it in my degree, and by that time it was too late, for them to say anything. But international law has been there with me throughout. And in second year, I came I came second in my open challenges all across the university. and a team comprising of second years. We went to Jessops, we represented the university. That was the experience of a lifetime, though very nascent, but very adventurous at the same time to go forward and do something like that, I believe. And we did fairly well. We did fairly well by our standards. And then what cemented my position was that I got, and which I'll speak about later, but like, when I worked in London, for about quite some time, I understood the values of laws, the interconnectivity of laws between countries, states, and especially when aspect of international commercial arbitration, the interaction of laws is extremely important for one to understand. So as to say, what is this governing law, and the law of the sea, venue, these are very intricate details which one needs to learn, and for that you need to appreciate various law, various segments of law and things like that. So it was a long process, but it's extremely interesting because, come to think of it, going forward, I think that international law will play a huge part in the governance and the well-being of the country. Because I believe that when the World War One and World War Two happened, it it is my opinion that it primarily happened because international law at that point of time was still gradually, developing. It was in a developmental phase and moving on and things like that. But when the PCIG's failure led to the failure of the League of Nations led to the formation of the United Nations, and that led to a lot of development in international law, its jurisprudence. It's based on Article 38 of the ICJ Charter, and ever since that we have grown a lot. And now going forward, be it climate change, be it trade and commerce, be it anything, okay, it's based on international understanding between states, comity of states as we call it. So yes, it is going to be a huge part. It's unfortunate that in India, however, the practice of that is minimal. Students are skeptical because of, and rightly so, because of the lack of opportunities available. Um, but if you close your eyes, if you fall in love with the subject, if you take that leap of faith, I think it's worth it at the end of the day, because it's something which is really interesting. I mean, who wouldn't want to work on something with the law related to law of war? Like, if a bomb is falling somewhere, whether that forms a conflict or not, it's really interesting. So why not?
All right, Anubhav, you spoke a lot about, and we are in the course of our conversation about to talk about your foreign internships. So we know you've interned at some of the top law firms in the country, and then you went ahead to do an internship with Freshfields, and then a research project with Professor Martin Hunter at Essex Court Chamber in London. How are the two experiences different, and how to go about getting those internships abroad?
Uh, I mean, I have worked with few of the premier. I have worked and interned with few of the premier law firms in India, and I have had the opportunity to work with, intern with few of the greatest organizations in the world, be it Freshfields and Essex Court Chambers. I mean, when you enter these organizations, you feel like a side cast in the Ocean's 11 movie casting. So it's overwhelming, because there were times when I was in the elevator in Essex Court Chambers and there was Malcolm Shaw right beside you in the elevator, and you're like, oh, okay, you're not really sure what you're supposed to do. But at the same point of time, it's a challenge, and you are grateful, and you are that you could reach such a place, and you count your blessings and you try to make the most of it. Now, coming to a question, India, I mean, I've worked with Shadun Amarchand Mangaldas, I've worked with Trilegal, uh, I've worked with
JSA.
JSA, I've worked at JSA as well. Karanja Wala, I mean, it's been a while, okay? It's been a while since I've done all of this. So, and these experiences are different, because most of these law firms are corporate commercial centric. You have a hierarchy, a specific hierarchy, different culture in few of these firms. For example, Trilegal was a brilliant place to work in, because in Trilegal, I remember that, as interns, the food benefits you would get, perks you would get after 8 o'clock was enough reason for you to stay back and do long hours. And I remember, we used to stay back till 2 because there was work as well. But we used to stay back till 1 a.m. at night, 2 a.m. at night, and it was really, really rewarding. I used to work in the disputes team there. In JSA, where I also worked later on in my career as an associate, I interned in the Bombay office, in the capital markets team and the media team as well. So there was two contrasting practice areas there. So while I was doing that, when you're in a team of law firm where you're 100 odd lawyers, you're intern, it's really important for you to make a mark, or not, or to put it in a better way, to make yourself known. Okay, so to be honest, I think Indian firms, the amount of and the quantum of work that there is, and the lack of lawyer that there was at that point of time when I interned, I believe that there was a lack of administration, or not administration, maybe a lack of systematic approach to things. But however, the learning curve was always very steep, and that's what you need. That's what you need. You have to be thrown at the deep end and make your own end back. So that's it. But whereas in London, you are literally, during the first week of your working, your hand held to everything, and which is of course always not appreciable, because you would want to figure out a lot of things by yourself. What happens is that it helps you better to familiarize with situations better, because when in a new jurisdiction, in a new place, as interns, you're first of all very overwhelmed with the picture of working with associates, partners, and all of that, and you're really overwhelmed with the idea. So it really helps when somebody gives you a systematic approach to things. However, like I said, the Indian law firms, where the work curve, the work magnitude, the mentorship that I've received in firms like JSA, Amarchand, and and Trilegal, Karanjawala are unparalleled. The learning curve is so steep in a short span of time that it's really, really nice. However, coming back to the London law firms, Freshfields is one of the Magic Circle law firms. In such an organization, the work is different. It's much more of a teaching curve. They teach you for 2 weeks, 1 week, and then they unleash you to the work that is there at hand. Okay, and once they unleash you to the work, they expect you to be able to cope with things. In addition to that, you are expected to the social life factor in foreign law firms is much more. Like on a weekly basis, every team would host like a beer brewing session or a wine tasting session, and things like that, and you were expected to be a part of that. And if you could not be a part of that, it was not really the best possible thing, because the amount of work that was allotted to you was taken into consideration that you would be able to finish in the stipulated amount of time given to you. So that the learnings are huge in both the places, but obviously the quantum of work, the magnitude of work, the huge diaspora of people, from all across the world is much more in a foreign law firm. And, like the people you read about on a day-to-day basis, in international law organizations, for example, in Essex Court Chambers, you work, you see, you don't actually work with them, but you see, Toby Landau, Malcolm Shaw, they're walking past you in the same organization. And for a student who was coming from Bhubaneswar, it was an extremely overwhelming experience, and I'm glad I could make the most of it. And of course, thanks to Professor Hunter for having given me the opportunity to have done that. So that said, the approach to intern with these law firms are also very different. In India, when I used to apply to these law firms, I remember back in 2012, 2013, a while back, I did not have a strategy. I used to take up I used to take up like a list of email IDs and just shoot out emails, hoping things would bother. There were times I would call the HRs and follow up with them on a weekly basis. Try to understand them, follow them on LinkedIn, drop in a message there. Drop in text messages whenever I could, because to be honest, I did not have somebody helping me. Contacts, it does not matter. You can't wait and waste script about that. Okay, either you have to go and get it, or you don't have to go and get it. Either you don't get it. So, and whereas my application in London was through much more of university level thing, where Professor Hunter actually selects or takes one person from our university every, used to take annually one person to London, and I was lucky to be that person in my batch. And yes, so that's completely changed the face of how I looked at the profession and how the profession hopefully looked back at me. So yes.
All right. That was a beautiful answer, by the way. So let us talk about your current role. You work on international arbitration. You work on public international law. How does your typical day look like? What happens to a person who opts for international law as a practice area? What duties, responsibilities, and cases they have to come across on a day-to-day basis, and how do they go about it?
Yeah, this is a this is a very apt question. Okay, I mean, my colleagues and we just set up our own law firm as back as December, January 2017-18, and ever since that we've gotten an overwhelming experience, response to how we function. So my partners and I, we are experienced in bilateral treaty investment arbitrations, international arbitrations, and of course domestic arbitrations. But we have to keep in mind at this very point in time, we can't actually pick and choose what we want to do, because as growing lawyers, the quantum and magnitude of work is very, very vast and very large. So so we fixed ourselves a mantra that we keep our goal fixed, like our aim and ambition fixed, which we work towards on a daily basis. There's international commercial arbitrations, VIT arbitrations, but we also take court disputes, general corporate transactions and things like that, because the learning curve should always be there. But coming back to how our work day pans out is that we have given ourselves the leeway to, we are actually trying to change and revolutionize the way law firms work. I mean, however minuscule this start is, the whole idea is that the whole idea of this project and process is that to be comfortable with in the environment or how you work. Everybody has a different work style. Everybody works best in a different setup, and somebody works better at night, somebody works better in the daytime, somebody's a morning person, somebody's a night person. So we have a very unanimous work start time. That is 10 o'clock, okay, which is way later than Bangalore starts its day. But whenever we have court, we of course, we manage our timings and whatever not. When we start work, our work includes a lot of, because our work includes a lot of business development, our work includes a lot of advisory, so work includes a lot of human resource, because everything is in our hands, and it's too much juggling. Okay, so basically we try to first sit down, write it down on a piece of paper, what are the tasks we have on hand. Once we've settled that, we allocate the work between interns, if we have interns, or between our colleagues and our juniors, and then we set off for the day. We set deadlines, very manageable deadlines, and our clients have so far been extremely understanding as to how we work. We believe in quality. We believe in three to four level of review and check of whatever we send out, and we believe that a lawyer should be given his or her space whenever it's required, because I'm 26. My hair is white, and I don't want that to happen for the coming generation. So to come, because stress takes up the bigger part of this profession, and burnouts are real. And we're trying to change the landscape in relation to this. How we are trying to change it is flexible deadlines, understanding clear communication between the workmen. Okay, we have a WhatsApp group where everybody just communicates whatever they're able to do and whatever they are not able to do, and when they're able to do and when they are not able to do, and that helps a lot of things. Okay, so if I am free right now, we can take it. I can take it up. It does not mean that there have been times we've finished transactions waking up till like 5 a.m. at the night, where people, our team members have taken naps at intermittent intervals, and we've. But the whole idea is the work should finish, and there should be our last man standing. So hopefully we will succeed in what we are trying to do. And our day includes a lot of business development activity, like we said. So it's reaching out to people, a lot of networking meets, writing to a lot of people, writing on a lot of blogs, interviewing people, and things like that. And Aditya, I mean, the most ridiculous part of this profession is no two cases come as similar in nature. Okay, none of them are same in nature. Like if it was the same, would have been so much easier for us to handle. But and that fine line of difference between every factual situation that we have is probably what keeps us going on a day-to-day basis. The excitement, the research, the advancement in laws that we see, the minute amendments, and keeping our clients abreast about what is happening and sending it to our future clients. So yeah, I mean, it's extremely fulfilling at this point in time, and could not be happier. Yeah. I can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I'm really keen on knowing as to what kind of cases you get in public international law, because given its scope in India, it's so limited, so restricted. What kind
Yes.
of cases do you deal with, and how do you go about it? What are the forums that you apply to? What is a current JD of a public international lawyer looks like, if I may ask?
So as I mentioned before, that our bio data or our work profile does not only include public international law. However, public international law is one of our mainstays. In any international commercial arbitration or bilateral investment treaty arbitration, you will see public international law being used to a great extent, be it jurisdiction or application to merits, things like that. Okay, especially in bilateral investment treaty arbitrations. Of course, for obvious reasons, I'm not being able to take names, but we advise corporates on claims. I mean, we have been involved in advisory of a corporate against a country, so that when you're going up against a country, it's basic level advisory, but when you're going up against a country, there are your strategy, your mindset, your research, your everything changes to a great extent. I remember the initial few emails we sent out. Uh, we started drafting them at night and we saw dawn. I mean, and it's how it is. We get so paranoid, not paranoid, that might not be the word, but we get so into it that we just we just go through the substances, the law, again and again, try to cover it from all ends and things like that. But to come back to your question, what facets do we cover in public international law is essentially jurisdictional aspects, whether the tribunal has jurisdiction or not, whether the merits are to be ascertained by a domestic court or are to be tried as per a foreign court, or things like that. For example, if if there is a Singapore-based party, an Indian-based party, and so operative law might be the Singaporean law. So in that case, we have to deal with councils from that country because we are not validated to practice the law there. So so there's a huge interaction and understanding go there. So while we say that we interact with foreign lawyers on a basic groundwork level, we also have to go through the laws of that country. For example, when we were dealing with advising a client on its claims against another corporate on its claims against a country, we had to go through the country's FDI mandates, its contract act, its its judiciary's take on various aspects of law and the issues that were there. For example, Champati being one of them, things like that. So it's a quite a well-rounded task, but so far we've not gotten the opportunity, and it's quite far away. But hopefully soon, where we get opportunities to go in, and advise nations on claims in International Court of Justice. But at this present point in time, a lot of our work in relation to public international law is based on advisory, be it climate change, be it policy making, everything. It's based on climate change and understanding between the countries. So that's how we work on a day-to-day
All
basis.
right. Anubhav, before we move towards talking about climate change and forced migration, I have a couple of questions for you from the people who are watching us right now. We'll take two of them right now. The first question comes from Kunal Chandriani, who wants to know that is public international law the only way to go overseas and practice? Can you suggest any way to do so?
No, public international law is one of the ways to go out abroad and practice, of course. But for that, for example, if you are practicing in UK, it is advised that you go there and you qualify as a barrister or an attorney in UK, and then you are validated to practice law in the UK. So that is one of the ways to go out and practice. However, it remains that international law is the most, or international arbitration is the most seen form of practice which is used to go out and practice law abroad, because you need people from various diaspora, various countries to be involved in the various kind of disputes that there are. So to come back to the specific question that Kunal had to ask, Kunal, you can consider joining. You can consider looking at vacation scheming at one of the law firms in UK, and if you successfully get the vacation scheme and you convert the vacation scheme into a training contract, the firm pays for your QLPD, if I am not too sure if that's what they call it. Basically, your transformation from an Indian qualified lawyer to a British qualified lawyer, and then you can start practicing there. Otherwise, if you want to practice in the European countries in any aspect of law, you can practice in an aspect as an advisor or a policy developer. But if you want to have the rush to go and practice and advise and be active in courts of law, I mean, unfortunately, you have to qualify in the respective country. For that matter, a JD abroad or a master's abroad in a university like Cornell or any of the Ivy Leagues in US opens up your door to appear for the New York bar. And once you've appeared for the New York bar, if the ball's on your court, and it's not only when you appear for the New York bar, the ball's in your court. The ball's at your court at any point of time, in any given point of time. So it's what you make out of that situation, what you are in, rather than what situation you think you are being put in. So best of luck to whoever asked that question.
All right, Kunal, I hope that answers your question. The next question I have for you is from Rebecca Dias, who wants to know how should one go about in the undergraduate course if the interest lies in arbitration in terms of writing papers, going about internships. How does one go?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I could not get that.
All right, the question is from Rebecca Dias. She wants to know how should one go about during their undergraduate course if the interest lies in arbitration in terms of writing research papers, going for internships, etc.
Okay, Rebecca, that's a very, very important question, and thank you for putting it out. Arbitration is not quite the best, like the most sought after subject among students in law school, but most important out of them is that you read a lot. Okay, I would suggest that you start with reading the basic Indian Arbitration Act 96, be abreast with the the amendments which came out in 2015, and subsequently with the ordinance which is in hold right now and the amendments which are being proposed. Be absolutely abreast with that, and then going forward, what you can do is that read up some like two books, let's say Redfern and Hunter on international arbitration, and and of course Gary Bond's book on international commercial arbitration, because those two books form the basic foundation of international commercial arbitration. Why I asked you to read books on the Arbitration Act is basically because to get an idea of what arbitration in our country is. However, as my mentor and my guru, Professor Martin Hunter, puts it forward, arbitration, international arbitration as compared to domestic arbitration is sea elephant compared to a land elephant. Okay, one has a trunk to show and the other does not. Okay, so they are starkly different in their accountability, and so things like that. Now going forward, what you can do is that please, Rebecca, go forward and get yourself, initiated or get the memberships done in organizations like Young Singapore International Commercial Arbitration Center, Young LCI, which is the London Court of International Arbitration, Young ICCA, Young ICC, Young Stockholm Chamber of Arbitration. All of these have Young, for example, Young MCI. MCI being the first international arbitration, prominent international arbitration center in India, which has come up in the last couple of years. So get the young, the young memberships done, so that it opens you up to a broad array of, meets and seminars and lectures and things like that. So of course follow ITES and An Hour With LawSikho, because they also come up with things like that. But as much as you can write to people, follow people on LinkedIn, write to them, read up more on arbitration. Write more. For example, the Cartel journal coming out from NU Jodhpur is one of the prominent journals in India. In relation to the Vinder Bona journal is a very important journal. So you write more, okay, and you read more, attend these conferences, okay, and the world's your oyster, and there's nothing to look back. There's nothing to look back at. And as for me, I'm available on LinkedIn, on Facebook. And you can always get in touch with me. Whatever little help I can be of, will be most happy to help you in any direction that may require.
I hope that answers your question, Rebecca. Thank you so much, Anubhav, for that answer. Let's quickly talk about climate change and forced migration, because we're left with very little time. Why do you think, and most importantly, why do you think that it is an issue that needs an addressing?
Climate change is real. I think it's real because I'm not Donald Trump or neither a Donald Trump follower. I'm sorry for my political radicalism, but that's what my opinion is. But I've been involved or in research or in any form of working with climate change and forced migration since I was in law school. In fact, my thesis was on climate change and forced migration. Aditya and viewers, I'm going to put out some stark statistics in front of you. The UNHCR puts out that there will be about 100 million climate refugees by 2050. 10% of the landmass from Bombay will be washed out by 2030. There'll be acute food shortage, which leads to internal crisis within the countries and then affects our external boundaries. And climate change goes beyond the idea of a polar bear not finding an ice shelf to chill on. Okay, it's beyond that. It's real. I will love to deal with in a bit more detail in the subsequent questions. But climate change is real. It's the effects of which are seen on a day-to-day basis. The change in rainfall pattern, the droughts, and everything related to that. So yes.
All right, Anubhav. The next question that I have is, do you think that climate change has a direct impact on food security? And can an issue like this lead to international conflict? If yes, then we would want you to put some instances so that our viewers can understand it better.
Okay, Aditya, thank you so much for this question. Let me explain to you how this situation may work. Okay, climate change. So let's consider our neighboring country, Bangladesh. Okay, Bangladesh is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. It has a population of about 170 million people. Okay, and and the size of the country is about 1,50,000 square kilometers, which is fairly small as compared to the population. For example, uh, you know the size of Russia. Russia is only 130 or 140 odd million people. And as compared to the size of the country, compare the size of Bangladesh, and look at the people. So Bangladesh has been facing a problem of saline water intrusion for the longest time. Okay, that being said, it has been affecting the main livelihood of Bangladesh, which is farmers and fishermen. Okay, now the UNFCCC report in its fifth assessment report came forward and said that within 5 to 10 years there'll be a rise of sea level by 1 to 3 meters. To just put things into perspective, I'm 6 feet and my height is 1.83 meters. So a rise in sea water level from 1 meter to 3 meter is, and across the area of the ocean is humongous quantity. And if that happens, about 17 to 20% of the Bangladesh landmass will be washed out in its entirety. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how grave this situation is? And once that happens, there will be 30 million climate refugees on the run. That's, and who's the country next to? So it doesn't becomes Bangladesh's problem anymore. It's very pertinent to understand that climate change is not a state specific problem. If climate change affects, it'll affect it'll affect all the countries. Okay, it's not a third world problem. It is a problem based for, it's for everyone. So if 30 million refugees try to stalk to India and some to Burma, and some up north, you understand what happens when they come into India. Okay, it affects the food security level in our country. It affects, which affects, of course, leads to inflation, and then subsequently we have to deal with our own climate change perspectives. And anyway, we are dealing with such a huge population, and this is just one such example. Beautiful countries like Maldives, the Pacific Islands will get washed out in some time. And as much as I feel like cold-blooded to say statements like this, but this is true. This is what has been happening, and this is what will happen. They will get washed out, and once they get washed out, the whole maritime delimitation problem comes into the picture, because we have set up our maritime system after years and years of deliberation through UNCLOS 1983. And once this gets hampered, there's a whole change in structure, and countries are in strife between themselves in relation to things like that. Okay. In addition to that, 8 of the 10 most like commercial headways in the headway cities in the world are coastal cities. To name a few: Bombay, Shanghai, London, New York. And it's upsetting that the leader of the free world refuses to believe that climate change is a real. Face it, that said Donald Trump. I mean, so it's actually upsetting how things work. So this is the present scenario in relation to climate change.
Anubhav, we'll talk about Donald Trump's take in a while. But an issue with such humongous magnitude, which can affect the world at large. What are the international councils doing? What is the take of UNCLOS and UNSC on this? And what is the take, and what is their role in governing this?
Okay, so I have to deal with UNCLOS and United Nations Security Council separately. First of all, UNCLOS is the United Nations Convention of Laws of Seas. UNCLOS essentially gives us the idea of how maritime waters are interpreted between states. What constitutes high seas, what constitutes the states water. For example, the best example to go back is the Italian Marines case, where you understand that this is territorial waters for this country. That's high seas, where everybody can open to free movement, and things like that. So the UNCLOS regime came to being in 1983 after heavy deliberation throughout. And as I mentioned before, that the international law regime throughout has gone through huge change in jurisprudence since the formation of the United Nations. Now, if we see that we have country A, country B with proper limitations and things set, okay. Now, if a country, the entire landmass or a country between them gets removed, okay, what happens then? What is the situation one gets to deal with? Okay, because while you're delimiting the maritime boundaries between two countries, a lot of things are taken into feature. For example, certain angular effects, the depth of the sea level, a lot of scientific things are taken into the picture. But now, once a country is completely disappeared from the picture between, a recalculation needs to come into the picture. Okay, and another argument there has been is that suppose country A, country B, and we have country C in between, and country C completely washes out. What happens is that country A accepts most of the refugees from country C. So do they have a greater stand in maritime delimitation? Is that the case? We don't know, but we don't want a situation like that to come later on. So yeah. So that's the UNCLOS bit of it. In relation to the United Nations Security Council, I mean, there have been deliberations going on. For the first time, the United Nations Security Council visited this issue was in the year 2007. Okay, when they spoke about the first addressed whether climate change is real or not. Okay. Of course, we had our usual opposers during that proceedings. I think that particular sitting was taken over by the British, chairperson. I am forgetting the name, and they agreed that climate change is real and it's inflicting and things like that. So to that end, we had the opposers. Pakistan was representing the group of 77, developing nations. They said that no, nothing doing. This is not real. This is due to the orbital change of the Earth's revolution, rotation. So climate change can't be real. China and Russia came into being and said that, listen, we understand this is a concern, but this is not a security concern. This is not a security concern, and more so, this is a concern in relation to developmental issues, and nothing to be dealt with United Nations Security Council. So what happens in that picture is that you get vetoed out of that position. And but what we are forgetting is that as per Chapter 6 and 7 of the United Nations Charter, the Security Council has the right to determine what constitutes threat to peace and security. So it was very much, climate change is very much a part of, threat to peace and security. The next time this situation was revisited was in the year 2011, when Pakistan came into being and said, not Pakistan, sorry, Germany came into being and said that, we need to address this, guys, let's address this. In such a situation as well, we had the similar usual suspects trying to defend their stand in relation to that, this not being a real affair. Now, but however, by this time, the Obama administration had made climate change a part of their active, in international affairs, and they were actively a part. They considered this to be a real deal and things like that. In the meantime, the states, the Pacific, there's a conglomerate of states called the SIDS. They are small, independent, developing states in the Pacific. And they came up countries like Nauru and Papua New Guinea. President Marcos of Nauru, at that point of time, came up and said, "Boss, our threat is real. This is as much climate change and rise in sea level is as much threatening to a small country like ours as compared to ballistic missile or nuclear threat to your country." because if such a situation hits our country, we don't have the administrative expertise, the economic expertise to tackle a situation like that. An island like ours, in where about 2 lakh, 3 lakh people are inhabiting, if it gets washed out, we don't have the management to take care of this. However, again, as I mentioned, we had the usual suspects who came about and said that, this is not to be dealt with by the United Nations Security Council. The Security Council has no business to talk about, climate change. We can give assertive reasonings, but direct, impulsive, reasoning can't be imposed on anybody in relation to climate change, because this is much more of a developmental plan, developmental scheme than of a. And there are other organizations, the UN, which are better equipped to take care of it, such as the UNFCCC, and the ECOSOC, and the General Assembly. But you realize when you propose things like in the General Assembly, you get lost. You get lost. And again, when you propose this in front of the General Assembly, the UNSC, by its hierarchy, has a higher say. When permanent members of the UNSC have a greater say in situations like that. So, I mean, things have evolved and changed so far, but it's still upsetting to see things, like Russia, trying to defend its stand on climate change and forced migration. In 2015, they came up with a press, a statement where they agreed that it's a concern. Climate change is a concern, and it would be dealt with in the following manner. There were a few pages after that. However, since then, because the United Security Council has come up and passed resolutions in relation to Ebola outbreak in Africa. HIV/AIDS was considered to be a concerning peace and security in Africa, and things like that. So if we consider these occurrences of considering Ebola as a threat to peace and security as per the United Nations Charter, climate change can very well be considered a threat to peace and security. However, it's not that simple. It's not a clear interpretation of legislation of the United Nations Charter. It's much more diplomatic relationships which are at play at that face it. So, hopefully, I think Trump has agreed to revisit the terms of the Paris Pact. Hopefully things will turn into a better picture. So, yes, looking forward to the best.
All right. You spoke a lot about the role of Security Council and how the takes have been so far. So, so you spoke about a lot of countries having different takes on it. What has been the US's attitude after Obama left towards the same, especially in the light of the current measures that Trump has been announcing and going about? What do you think is the current take, and how do you think this will affect the rest of the
Yes.
countries?
A clear depiction of US's stance to climate change is Barack Obama talking on the David Letterman show on Netflix. And right now, after the Obama administration is out of the picture, it's really because US plays a huge part in a lot of diplomacy and a lot of understanding in relation to world politics. Having said that, the Paris Pact, as we are aware, the Paris Pact negotiations were underway last year. And there were certain leeways which were given to China and India because they were considered to be a hugely populous country and developing states at the same India to be a developing state at the same time. So they were given certain leeways which USA were not agreed given. So the orange-faced man that Donald Trump is started crying and said that we don't agree with this, and they backed out from the Paris Pact, which was a huge blow because strangely whatever Germany's part was in the atrocities in the world during the 1940s and the 1910s and all of that, but Germany is real time trying to help in climate change, forced migration, and the European countries are out there trying to tell everybody Hello guys, it's real. Climate change is as real as an ice cube which is 7 kilometers in length and 7 kilometers in breadth melting every month. So can you imagine the magnitude of water which is being influxed in? So they are trying to understand the Greenland ice cap, according to the UNFCCC fifth assessment report, is melting at a great rapid pace. We have induced most of the effects of climate change are human induced, and we just ought to take care of it. I understand that since the industrial revolutions we have done we've made leaps and bounds and things like that, but it's time that we have to balance it out in our own hand. However, I mean, Donald Trump's, accomplices have gotten some sense into him, and he's agreed to revisit the terms of the Paris Pact as soon as possible. Paris Pact comes into, full force in the year 2020. So hopefully things will become better. Hopefully everybody understands that climate change is real. We don't have much time, and we have less time as well. So hopefully things will change.
All right, we'll have the last question for the hour, and we want a very quick answer to this because we are running out of time. The question is that what we as lawyers can do to benefit the whole situation, or to be an aid to the whole situation. Hello, Anubhab.
So yeah, can you hear me?
We are losing the connection a little. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, this is much better. Can you please get the last answer?
I can hear. Yeah. So can pay in climate change.
We're very sorry, but we can't hear you do something about it. Hello.
Am I audible now?
Anuv, can you just shut the camera off and just talk instead so that the data is consumed lesser?
Just give me a second. Okay.
Yeah, you can talk.
Yeah, is it? Yeah, is it better now?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so lawyers can really help in the process of climate change and forced migration, and not only lawyers, everybody can. I mean, I just gave a lecture a couple of days back in a university in Bangalore in relation to climate change, forced migration, and I got an overwhelming response after that. I got to know my friends who are architects, who are doing policy, all interested in this space. And architects take a different role in dealing with climate change and things like that. How lawyers can take is lawyers have one of the biggest roles in dealing with climate change is trying to ascertain maritime delimitation, maritime laws, understanding food security implications on the economy of the country, understanding various aspects of migration and refugee law as per the Hague Conventions, and things like that. And this is where also international law plays a big understanding, okay, negotiations as well, things like that. See, at the end, we either sail together or we sink together. As I said before, this is not a third world problem. This is a problem for everyone. And it really does not depend whether you're a lawyer or whether you're not a lawyer, whether you are doing something in relation to this profession or not. Even if you're an accountant, you have, or anybody, even if you own a business, it's your primary responsibility to know about what climate change is and make more people know about this thing. And how you do it is read. You get to know what are the real effects of climate change. It is all available in the United Nations website. You just need to type climate change. It's all there, all the regulations there. The IPC, the IF, the United Nations Convention on United Nations, UNFCCC. Okay, it has everything there. Okay, in relation to climate change. So. And educate people, make people aware, make people interested in this. Okay. And lastly, I'll sound like an uncle and be a bit preachy. Please recycle. Switch off your lights before you leave. Shut off your air conditioners. Um, and yeah, that's about it. Recycle as much as you can. Have less of beefsteak or like red meat. Yeah, that's all about climate change. So yeah, it's real, it's happening, and hopefully we'll all be together to take care of it. As I said, we sail together or we sink together. So yeah.
All right, Anubhav, on those notes, we call it a day for today's show. Thank you so much for being a part of this. It was an absolutely wonderful experience to have you on this show, and very enlightening and enriching at the same time. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. For
Cheers.
everybody who's watching us right now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Joining us tomorrow is Abhyuday Agarwal, who will be talking about one more important aspect of commercial corporate law that you don't know about and probably would want to know. So thank you so much. This is me, Aditya, signing off from today's An Hour with LawSikho. Have a great evening ahead. Till then, out, LawSikho. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.